Good evening and welcome to today's session for the subject Urban Governance and Development Management. It is 6 now, but as uh, no student or no learner has joined so far, so we wait a little longer, see if anyone joins, and then we'll start the session. So it's been some time now, although no one has joined so far, but I think I should start the session for today. So welcome to today's session. This is week 6. So today we'll discuss some problem questions related to whatever has been covered so far in week 6 of lectures. So this would have included lecture on an overview of municipal finance, another lecture of what are the alternate sources that any municipal body can access to finance its projects and undertakings. So a lecture on alternate sources of municipal finance, another lecture on municipal accounts, one lecture on value capture financing. So this would have gone in it's about how land and property uh, can be utilized, or building rights and things like that can be utilized to generate value, which can then be captured by the municipal body or the local body and certain development initiatives or development programs or infrastructure development, etc. Then final lecture would have been public-private partnerships in urban governance. So this would have gone into detail about how the public body, which is the state government or local government, they enter into contracts or partnerships um, with a private body or a private organization in order to finance and then seek technical or other sort of expertise in order to undertake any uh, development or infrastructure construction projects and things like that. So this is the last lecture. So this all has been covered so far in this week, and take a look at some example questions related to. So uh, the first question for today is the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act does not ensure the following, which is a constitutional mandate of local government, ensuring SC/ST reservation in the local government jobs, having a mandate for municipal development works, and a framework for elected governments at the local level. Again, the second question is also related to the same subject matter, which is the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, the devolution of powers and responsibilities to the ULB. So the second question again I have taken up with the first question only. So again the second question asks that to choose the correct statement from the following, and statements are the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act was introduced in the year 1997. The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act deals with rural local self-governance. The 74th Constitutional Amendment Act contains the powers, authority and responsibilities of Gram Panchayat, and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act does not provide revenue raising powers to the municipality. So again, both questions are talking about the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act and how the Act devolves powers and responsibilities from the center to the ULBs and sometimes even to the state government. So, as we discussed earlier, uh, we have um, the 74th CAA document shared in our shared folder, and I have annotated the document again, so you can see annotations about the rules and regulations and the components of the Act, which mention specific things related to the devolution of power from the center to the urban local bodies or to the state. So you can see here this annotation talks about local self-government, that is to say the constitution powers of the municipal corporation, improvement trusts, district boards, mining settlement authorities and other local authorities for the purpose of local self-government or village administration, and that the constitution of India is making detailed provision for ensuring local self-government. Again, there are regulations for the constitution of municipalities. Then there are regulations for reservation of SC/ST people and where the regulations apply and for what it applies, and even to what level it applies. Again, uh, regulations about the powers and functions of the municipalities, how they have been devolved and things like that. So one key important resource is always uh, the 74th CAA that you can consult, and additionally what you can pay attention to is that the 74th CAA recommends the transfer of 18 governance functions from the state governments to the urban governments, including those pertaining to land use, economic development, water, roads, and urban poverty alleviation. And these functions or the document which contains the transfer of these 18 governance functions is also known as the 12th schedule, as you might have seen in earlier lectures or earlier problem solving sessions as well. So basically that tells you about what functions and what responsibilities are or devolved from the center or the state to the urban local bodies. Again, the CA also paved the way for direct elections to all urban local bodies every 5 years, which was not the case before the CA came into being. So before this, there were some urban local bodies or city municipalities for larger cities like Kolkata, Bombay, and some other cities. But a municipality or an urban local body or even Gram Panchayat for rural areas was not the norm before the CA was introduced. So only after its introduction, direct election to all urban local bodies every 5 years was introduced, and elections were after this elections were held uh, 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 for each of the city after that. For this, elections were held only for municipal governments in large city, and state appointees, even in these municipal governments, state appointees served as governing committee members in the administrative agencies of smaller towns. So the actual but as we discussed earlier also, that although the 17 CA recommended the transfer of all the 18 governance functions from the state government to the urban, the actual devolution from the 12th schedule, uh, so what functions will actually be assigned to the urban local body were left to the state's discretion. So uh, the seven. So again, some of these 18 functions might not even be performed by the urban local body, as it was left to the state's discretion. Again, the 74th CAA did not discreetly suggest principles for fiscal devolution, though. So, although the functions and responsibilities were devolved, uh, which functions specifically will be devolved were left to the state's discretion, and again, even the fiscal devolution to the urban governments again was left to the state's discretion. However, what the CA did prescribe was that a state finance commission should be established every 5 years by the state government, and along the lines of the central finance commission, these state finance commissions will recommend resource distribution and mobilization methods that further the fiscal decentralization from state to the urban local government. So this would include things like revenue raising and disbursement of the funds for municipal finance, which will be determined and regulated by the state governments. Again, no divisible pool of tax resources between state and municipalities was set by the CAA, and transfer to municipalities is discretionary in nature and is done by the state governments. Again, particulars of municipal finance varies from state to state as each state decides uh, for themselves how they are going to do the fiscal devolution from the state to the urban local bodies. Also, urban governments in India are structurally differentiated on the basis of size and level of economic development. So, based on that, also, larger urban governments are vested with greater autonomy and thus have wider responsibilities, while in case of smaller urban local bodies, the level of autonomy and the level of responsibilities that they undertake is less. So, traditional municipal functions, some of which are a part of the 12th schedule or the 18 functions, they are taken over by the parastatals and specific purpose authorities. So, this is owed to several challenges that the urban local bodies face, and because of these challenges is why the state often deems it suitable for the state or the parastatal bodies to undertake some of the functions mentioned in the 12th schedule instead of the urban local body undertaking those functions. So these challenges include things like absence of adequate functional and financial powers, maybe poor financial status of the urban local body, then absence of adequate and technical manpower that the urban local body might not have. Again, absence of regular maintenance of infrastructure and consequent higher operating costs. So, if the urban local body were to undertake such a function, their operating costs would be much higher compared to if a state associated specific purpose organization or a parastatal body were to undertake that particular function. Then again, things like higher administrative and supervision charges and losses due to unaccountants of the services that are provided because of these reasons. Many a times, some of the functions, while prescribed by the CA to be devolved to the urban local body, they are not devolved but are undertaken by the state or the parastatal bodies. So I hope this gave you a little idea about of responsibilities and finance takes place. Again, you can feel free to go back to the 74th CAA document. Okay. Additionally, I have linked two more articles. So these are research articles which go into detail about these devolution of function from the state to the urban local body. So is one document talks about urban challenges in India and gives the policy measures. So it largely talks about the JNNURF and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, and then in examples and case studies, it talks about how the devolution has actually impacted, or it is actually manifesting in Indian cities. Another document is this. Uh, which is titled Opportunities and Struggles of Decentralized Governance Reform for Urban Municipalities in India. And again, it talks about the struggles and opportunities which are there for decentralization of governance and the reform of urban municipalities. Yeah, again, this goes into details and takes case examples of cities and tells you how the devolution or decentralization of fiscal responsibilities or the functional responsibilities, how they have actually devolved and are taking place in individual cities. So, um, takes a case example or it takes case examples of Jabalpur, Seora, Panagarh, Katangi, Shahpura, Majoli, Patan, Karela, and Bheraghat. So I hope these might be of use to you if you are interested in reading further and finding out further about the challenges associated with devolution of power and responsibilities to the urban local bodies. So I hope this makes it quite clear how to go about solving the first and second questions. The next question for today is what is the full form of BOT in context of financing infrastructure? And several options which include build, own, transfer, build, operate, transfer, borrow, own, transfer, and borrow, operate, transfer. So, in your lectures, you might have seen this that the local government or sometimes even central government have several sources of revenue or several sources of finance which they can then use to fund their projects. So, uh, the central and state level might have capital grants or loans, and they might have development assistance from HUDCO or bilateral or multilateral organizations. At the local level, they have their own revenue resources, which includes tax and non-tax resources. So tax resources includes things like property tax, entertainment tax, octroi tax, and vehicle tax. Non-tax resources include like fees for certain things, uh, fines, fees for the generation of licenses, land development and adjustment charges, extraction charges, and then user charges on some of the services or infrastructure that the local government owns. Then local government can even have available funding from budget allocation from the center and the state. Then they might have loans and grants from the public or the private sector. Then they also have a share of taxes uh, from the state government, which is called as tax sharing, and again that is left to the discretion of the state government how the state government will share taxes with the urban. So these are certain kind of regular sources of uh, funding or budget that the local government has, which they can use to fund their functioning or to fund certain development projects. Additionally, there are alternate sources of also which the local government can then use to fund its projects. This includes things like loan financing, so they can take loans from banks or specialized intermediaries. So in banks, the loans can be commercial banks, from infrastructure banks, or even from municipal development. Then they can opt for the function of pricing, which is the user charges for services that they provide. And the final thing which comes after all this is enter into a partnership or PPP mode, which is through private sector participation. So this can be either through leasing of certain infrastructure or service operation, through contracting, through franchising, or again through other PPP models like BO, BOT, BOLT, or BOST. So there are certain alternate sources of funding or projects which the local government can see. You can even get details about these alternate sources of funding from the URDPFI guidelines, like I have put here. So in this, the URDPFI guidelines give detailed guidelines or prescriptions of based on what kind of project, what kind of sources the urban local body can seek to fund their project. So, for example, in the case of large infrastructure projects at state or the district level, the state government or even urban local bodies can look to get funding by bilateral or multilateral agencies. They can get foreign direct investment, and they can look for public-private partnership. For city infrastructure, they can get central grant in aid and schemes, so like the centrally sponsored schemes, and then they can enter into public-private partnerships. They can get loans from financial institutions for short to medium terms, and then they can even get municipal bonds or debentures. For some kind of social infrastructure or capacity building projects for PMC, they can get funding from bilateral and multilateral agencies. They can get municipal bonds and debentures. Again, central grant in aid schemes, and again, public-private partnerships. Or they can even fund social infrastructure through funding that they seek from CSR type of arrangements or corporate social responsibility. So, for real estate projects, they can get FDI. They can fund it from municipal bonds and debentures. I'm sorry. They can fund it from public-private partnerships, and then again they can even get loans from financial institutions. So, for public-private partnerships, this is again from the UIDPFI guidelines. There are several ways or several kind of different models of public-private partnership which can be, say, adopted by the local government based on the type of projects and type of partnership that they want to enter. So, can be supply and management contracts, which either be supply or service contract, and maintenance management or operational management if it is related to supplying or providing certain kind of service, or if they are entering into maintenance of certain kind of facility, or providing the operational assignment to a private partner instead of the urban local body running it themselves. Then there can be turnkey projects. The local body can give certain infrastructure or certain service operations for lease to the private partner. Then they can function through concessions, which can either be supply or service type of contracts or bought type of contracts. And then they can enter private ownership of assets, in which they sell the assets or let the private partner have the ownership of the assets, and they run it or operate it for the benefit of the public body. So again, in what type of contracts, there are several different categories, like the design, build, finance, operate, DBFO model, or DBFOMT model, which is design, build, finance, operate, maintain, and transfer, and several others. So we'll see some of these examples. So basically, in types of PPP models, there is certain types, as I showed here. These are the types in which the public body is the owner of the assets, and then there are certain types in which the private body is the owner of the assets. So in cases where the public body is the owner of the assets, the private skill or the private sector skills are brought into the service and design and delivery, sometimes even operation and control, labor management, and equipment procurement. So their skills are brought in to do these functions, while the control of the public enterprise remains with the urban local body or the state government, basically with the public body only. So these can be of different type. One type is management contracts. So in this type of arrangement, a contractual agreement is done between the government and the private sector for management of a public enterprise, either partially or completely by the private party. So in these also there are several different examples or several different models which include supply or service contracts. So in this type of contracts, supply of certain material or equipment or service is provided to the public or to the public enterprise by a private counterpart. So the main purpose of contracts is to ensure that the supply of relevant service uh, is done at the desired level of quantity. And then there are maintenance management type of contracts in which the private partner is contracted by the public partner to operate, maintain, and manage a facility or manage a system which provides a certain service. So this can be like providing service of wastewater treatment, uh, providing other kind of water treatment. Then comes operational management contract. So this in this kind of contract, the public partner contracts uh, with a private partner for a and or maintains a specific service. So basically, the private partner is in charge of maintaining a specific service for the public partner, and uh, uh, the private operator or the private partner who is operating the system, infrastructure or service, whatever, the private operator is paid a fixed fee for performing the task of managing and operating the particular infrastructure. More complex contracts also exist, which may offer greater incentives for efficiency improvement by defining performance targets. And again, the fee is based in part on fulfillment of the performance and efficiency targets as set by the public body. So then there are other things like turnkey projects. So turnkey project is a traditional public sector procurement model for infrastructure or infrastructure facilities. So in this, the private contractor builds a facility for a fixed fee or at a fixed rate or for a total cost, which is one of the key criteria in selecting the winning bid. So the government invites bids in order to award the project contract to the private partner. So the private partner then assumes the risk involved in design and construction phases, which is taken away from the local body, and the scale of investment by the private sector is generally low in this case, and it is for a shorter term. So this type of private sector is private sector participation is sometimes also known as design and build. Then there are kind of models. So in this, an operator or the leaseholder is responsible for operating and maintaining certain infrastructure facility or service, generally without making any large investment in the facility. And the operator retains revenue collected from customers or the users of the facility and makes a specified lease payment or lease fee to the contracting authority, which is the public. Fixed facility and land leases are out for a longer period than for mobile assets. So then there are concession type of partnerships. So in this case, the government defines and grants specific right to a private company to build and operate a facility for a fixed period of time. So the government may retain the ultimate ownership of the facility, or it may retain the right to supply these services. So typical concession periods range between 5 to 50 years, and concessions are awarded to the concessionaire under two types of contractual. So one is a franchisee. So under a franchisee agreement, the concessionaire provides services that are fully specified by the franchising authority body, and commercial risks are carried by private sector and may be required to make investment. So this form of private sector participation is historically popular in providing urban bus or rail services, as you might know. And then there are uh, BOT kind of models, which are build, operate, and transfer models. So, a build, operate, transfer, or several other variants are basically a type of concession system in which the concessionaire undertakes the investment and operates the facility for a fixed period of time, after which the ownership reverts back to the public sector. So, in the BOT type of model, the government carries the risk, and the various type of operations exist based on different kind of responsibilities of the private partner involved. So, in the DBFO, or Design, Build, Finance, Operate model, the responsibilities for designing, building, financing, operating, and maintaining are all bundled together and transferred to private sector partners. And varying degree of financial responsibility is transferred to the private sector. The direct user fee are the most common revenue source in this kind of. Then there is design, build, finance, operate, maintain, and transfer model, or DBFOMT. So in this model, it is similar to the DBFO model, except that the private sector also owns the asset until end of the contract, when the ownership after the end of the contract is then transferred to the public sector. Then there is brought, or build, rehabilitate, operate, transfer. In this model, the private developer builds an add-on to any existing facility, or completes a partially built facility, and then rehabilitates the existing assets, and then operates and maintains the facility at their own risk for the contract period, after which the facility then is transferred to the public. Then there is the design, build, operate, and maintain model, or DBOM model. So in this model, there is an integrated partnership that combines the design and construction responsibilities of design, build, procurements with operation and maintenance, after which the facility or the property is then transferred to the public partner. So I hope that was understandable. Then there are other models which include buy, build, and operate model, or BBO. So in BBO, uh, it is a form of asset sale that includes rehabilitation or expansion of an existing facility, and the government sells the asset to the private sector entity, which then makes the improvements necessary to operate the facility in a profitable way. Then there is boot, or build, own, operate, and transfer model, in which uh, a concession is granted by the public body to the concessionaire, who is responsible for the construction, financing, operation, and maintenance of the facility over the concession period, before finally they transfer the fully operation facility to the public partner. Then there is BTO model, build, transfer, and operate. So it is a contractual agreement in which the public sector contracts out the building or an infrastructure to a private entity, and the concessionaire builds the facility on a turnkey basis, assuming the cost overrun, delay, and other specified performance. Then there is build and transfer kind of model, which is a contractual agreement whereby the concessionaire undertakes the financing and construction of a given infrastructure or development facility, and after its completion, it turns over it to the government agency or the local government uh, body which is concerned. Then there is bot annuity. So it is a type of bot, but different from the regular bot. So In this, the contractual agreement is quite similar to the bot, but return on investments that are made in building and operating uh, the facility is not through levy and collection of user fee from the users. Instead, the owner or the government pay to the concessionaire an amount annually or biannually, which is called the annuity, which the concessionaire bids for. Then there is bill, lease and transfer, or BLT. So in BLT, the contractual agreement is in place whereby a concessionaire is authorized to finance and construct the infrastructure or development facility, and after its completion, then they turn it over to the public partner or the government agency. So after the lease arrangement is over, which is for a fixed period for which the ownership is with the public partner, after that period is over, the facility is automatically transferred to the government agency or the public. Then there is rehabilitate, operate and transfer, or ROT. So in the ROT contractual arrangement, an existing facility is turned over to the private sector to be refurbished, and then the facility is operated and maintained during the concession period by the private partner, after which the legal title to the facility is then turned over to the government. Then there is rehabilitate, own and operate model, or ROO, in which an existing facility is turned over to the private sector to refurbish and then operate with no time limitation imposed on the ownership of the particular facility. Then there are private. Then there are model in which the owner of the asset is not the public body but the private partner. So, in this form of participation, the private sector remains responsible for design, construction, and operation of the infrastructure facility as earlier. And in some cases, public sector may relinquish the right of ownership of the assets to the private sector. The main variants of this include build, own, operate, or BO, as we discussed earlier. Then there are private finance initiatives, or the PFI model, in which the private sector, similar to the BO model, builds, owns, and operates the facility. However, the public sector purchases the services from the private sector through a long-term agreement. Then another model is divestiture by license or sale. So in this model, a private entity buys an equity stake in the state-owned enterprise. However, the private stake may or may not imply private management of the enterprise. Then there are joint venture models. So joint ventures are alternatives to full privatization, in which the infrastructure, in the case of full privatization, the infrastructure is owned by the private body only. But in case of joint ventures, the infrastructure or whatever facility that we're talking about, it's co-owned and operated by the public sector and private operators both. So under a joint venture, the public and private sector partners can either form a new company or assume a joint ownership of an existing company through a sale of shares to one or several private investors to invest that venture. So these are all different kinds of models of public-private partnerships, and I think it is quite clear what this question is talking about, and it's easy to solve this question with all of this relevant information. So moving on ahead to the next question, which is, in the context of municipal accounts, what does NMAN stands for? And you have several options: National Municipal Accounts Monitoring, National Municipal Accounts Management, National Municipal Accounts Manual, or National Municipal Accounts Mission. So basically, it is related to an accounting reform which was introduced as a part of reform agenda of JNNURM. So basically, as a part of the reform agenda of JNNURM, and accounting reform was considered as a mandatory reform for the municipalities, and it was believed that accounting reforms will bring greater financial accountability and transparency to the municipality and municipal management. In addition to the accountability and transparency, what this accounting reform would do is that it will help the municipality to better assess their assets, their liabilities, and even their incomes and expenditure. So, in effect, what will happen that will it will help them prepare a sound database for all accounting matters, and in doing so, it will make the municipal governments more creditworthy for financial institutions. So, among many other initiatives taken by the MOUD for good governance, they also created a manual which was called Model a financial or you can say model counts and financial reporting manual, which would help the urban local bodies uh, create better databases for their accounting matters, or better adhere to this accounting reform that will help. So this is what this question is related to. So I won't tell you the answer to the full form of NMAM, but I think with this relevant information you can clearly get to the answer of this question. Moving on ahead to the next question, which is the State Finance Commission, or the SFC, is supposed to uh, mobilize urban development project funding or to allocate uh, central funding to each sector to streamline the taxing system or to bring more FDI to the investment. So again, this goes back to the 74th CAA, and 74th CAA's uh, regulation for State Finance Commission. So as we read earlier that the 74th CAA prescribed that the State Finance Commissions be established every 5 years by the state governments, and they should recommend resource distribution and mobilization methods to further the fiscal decentralization from the state governments to the local governments. So these include things like revenue raising and disbursement of funds for municipal finance, which would be determined and regulated by state governments. There would be no divisible pool of tax resources between states and municipalities, but states and municipalities can decide on their own discretion. Then transfer to municipalities again would be discretionary to the state, and particulars of the municipal finance again varies from state to state based on the state's discretion. And ultimately, for these purposes, the State Finance Commission was brought about. So I hope this is quite clear. And for more details, you can again go back to the 74th CA documents and go for details. Moving on to the next question. So the question is, which was the first ULB in India to access the Indian capital market? We have several options: Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, and Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. So I won't tell you which ULB it was, but I'll tell you what the question is talking about. So as we discussed earlier, that ULBs have several options to access funds to fund their projects. One of these options is the capital market, from where they can access funds. So capital markets are financial markets that brings buyers and sellers together to trade stocks, bonds, currencies, and other financial assets. And capital markets include stock market and the bond markets. So stock markets, you can also call them as equity markets. So, the first municipal credit rating in India was issued in 1996 to an urban local body, which is among these four options, and the first municipal bond without the state government acting as a guarantee was issued in 1998, and that bond was for rupees 100 crores. So this is what this question is talking about. To go further into the lectures or details about how or case examples of how some of the ULPs in India have accessed the capital market for funding their projects, I think you can clearly get to the answer of this question. Moving on ahead to the next question, which is consider the following sources of revenue from urban local bodies and choose the option which consists all the direct sources for revenue for the ULPs. You have options like value added tax or VAT, goods and services tax or GST, property tax and income tax. So you might know this well, that value added tax is levied by the central government, and goods and services tax is levied by both the center and the state government. So it's known as the CGST or the Central Goods and Services Tax, and SGST or the State Goods and Services Tax. And again, income tax is again levied by the central government. So you know about this. Additionally, you must have seen this flow chart as well. We discussed this flow chart earlier also, that the local government has several sources of getting funding, and one source is that it's from its own revenue sources is the tax revenue source, which comes from the property tax, entertainment tax, octroi, and vehicle tax. So I think that gives you the answer to this question. Okay, moving on to the last question for today, which is select any two most feasible options for ULB for accessing a capital market, and you have several options: equity, bonds, CSS, PFDF, leasing and contracting, and bank finance. We just discussed the capital market in this question also, but I'll just tell you the details about other options as well. So CSS is basically centrally sponsored schemes. So centrally sponsored schemes are schemes that are implemented by the state governments of India, but are largely funded by the central government with the defined state government share. Some examples of these kind of schemes are the PMAY or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which is now uh, classified into the rural and urban PMAY. Then there is the Swachh Bharat Mission, which is again classified into rural and urban SPM. And another example is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, which earlier was known as Manrega also. So these are some example of the centrally sponsored schemes, but again they are funded by the central government and accessed and implemented by the state. Then there is PFDF or Pooled Finance Development Fund. So what this is basically the central government has initiated this scheme to provide credit enhancement facilities to empower the small and medium urban local bodies to access market borrowings through a pooled finance system. So through pooled municipal bonds for the investment in urban infrastructure projects. So through these schemes, the ULB can bridge their resource gap by accessing market funds for their projects. So how they can do it? Basically, the central government provides credit enhancement assistance to the states pooled finance entities or the SPFE for accessing capital markets into pooled financing bonds on the behalf of the identified ULPs. So this is what the PFBF is. So I hope these are again clear. We read leasing and contracting. They are examples of PPP partnerships, again not related to accessing the capital market, and even bank finance is not related to accessing the capital market. So I hope this is clear. Again, you can go on to this chart and see what the capital market is related to and what are the government of India or the central government incentive funds, then other options. So I hope this was clear. Thank you for listening to this deep session and seeing the example questions. I hope it was helpful to you in solving problem sessions or your quiz or for understanding the lecture material. As no learner has joined today, I'll wait for some more time, see if anyone joins and has a query or a question. And in some time, I'll close the session if no one joins. And if someone joins, I feel free to ask your question. As no learners have joined so far, I think I'll close the session for today. Thank you all who are listening and following these live sessions. And I'll see you all in the next live session, which will be next Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you.